You're not tired because you work too much. You're tired because you've been at war every day with a version of yourself you were never meant to be. And the most dangerous part? You thought this war was normal. You thought everyone felt like this, dragging their body out of bed like it's made of concrete, choking down coffee like it's survival fluid, forcing smiles in rooms that drain you, nodding through conversations that feel scripted, faking clarity while your soul screams for meaning. You thought this was adulthood. You thought this was life. But what if I told you that your exhaustion isn't physical? It's existential. It's the weight of a false identity, programmed into you from the moment you could follow instructions. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit: you've been performing a role, not living a life. And roles are exhausting, especially when you never auditioned for them. They trained you to be who you are now, not through overt manipulation, but through 1,000 invisible cuts, each one shaping you, sharpening your mask, softening your truth. From the moment you were praised for being good, you learned that peace came from pleasing. From the moment you were told to sit still, you learned that safety came from shrinking. And from the moment you realized that being your full self made others uncomfortable, you decided, unconsciously, that it was easier to fragment than to fight. So you broke yourself into versions: the productive version, the polite version, the strong version, the quiet version, the agreeable version. And then you forgot which one was real. Now you're exhausted, not because you don't rest, but because you never feel safe enough to stop performing. You fall asleep wearing armor. You wake up ready for battle. You go to work hiding parts of you just to fit in. You scroll endlessly to feel something. You fake energy in places where you don't belong. You say, "I'm fine," when you're drowning. You chase goals you don't even care about anymore, but they make others proud. You stay busy because silence feels too loud. This isn't fatigue. This is spiritual erosion. And the system loves it that way. Because if you're always tired, you're too weak to question. If you're always distracted, you're too foggy to resist. If you're always running, you're too scattered to remember who you are. And so you obey. You buy what they sell. You follow what they post. You compare, conform, consume, and you call it being responsible. But what if you're not tired because of what you're doing? What if you're tired because of what you're denying? Your voice, your pace, your rhythm, your identity. What if your exhaustion is your soul's way of saying, "I can't carry this mask anymore"? They gave you a script, neatly packaged, efficiently distributed. Go to school, get a job, follow the rules, don't rock the boat, be realistic, settle down, smile. And you followed it. Because everyone else did. Because it was safer. Because it made sense. Until it didn't. Until the promotions stopped feeling exciting, until the parties started feeling empty, until the weekends became recovery missions, until the mirror started looking unfamiliar. That's when the fatigue became unbearable. Not the kind that a nap can fix, not the kind that vacation heals, but the kind that whispers, "You're living someone else's life." And here's the part they don't want you to realize: you're not lazy, you're misaligned, you're not weak. You're disconnected, you're not lost. You're just buried under layers of conditioning, culture, compliance, and that kind of tired. No amount of hustle, supplements, or planners can fix it, because the only cure for existential fatigue is remembrance. You have to remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. You have to remember what you loved before you were told what was realistic. You have to remember what made you feel alive before survival became the goal. And that's what this video is about. Not more productivity hacks, not more mindset fluff, not more fake positivity, but a return to your original frequency before the system dialed it down. So if you're still here, if you're still reading this, if you still feel something flickering beneath the burnout, then this isn't a video, it's a wake-up ritual. One paragraph at a time, we're going to peel back the layers. We're going to confront the programming. We're going to dismantle the mask. We're going to remember, Because you're not tired, you're misidentified. Let's begin. They never taught you how to rest. They only taught you how to earn it. Rest had to be justified, proven, measured in exhaustion, and only allowed once you deserved it, which meant once you were depleted, disconnected, and barely functioning. Because the system didn't just steal your energy, it redefined your worth as output. They programmed you to believe that the more you produce, the more you matter. That the busier you are, the more valuable you must be. That if you stop, you lose momentum. If you slow down, you're falling behind. If you feel peace, you're probably doing something wrong. And so you became a machine in human skin. Productivity became morality. Burnout became a badge. And rest became guilt. Let's be honest, you don't feel tired just because of what you do. You feel tired because of how you relate to yourself while doing it, because you weren't taught to work with your energy. You were taught to override it, ignore your signals, push through the pain. Don't be weak. Keep grinding. Winners don't quit. And somewhere along the line you forgot how to listen to yourself. You don't even notice the early signs anymore, the headaches, the heaviness, the irritability, the emptiness. You just override, suppress, perform. And that's not your fault. That's programming. That's the conditioning of a culture that values output over being. A world where your calendar is more important than your clarity. Where your deadlines dictate your self-worth. Where your phone owns your attention more than your soul. And this wasn't random. It was designed. The system trains you to confuse urgency with importance, to prioritize what's loud, not what's real, to respond faster and not deeper, to chase validation, not values. They want you constantly stimulated because a tired mind is easy to guide. A busy schedule is easy to distract. An exhausted heart is easy to manipulate. So, they engineered your environment, endless notifications, infinite scrolling, unrealistic productivity culture, comparison loops, quick wins, no silence. Because silence is dangerous. It's where your real voice starts to whisper again, the one they trained you to ignore. And here's the paradox. You were never taught to define success on your own terms. You were only taught to compete for a seat at someone else's table. The table they built, with rules they created, for systems they profit from. So you follow the script, wake up early, stay ahead, say yes, look busy, answer quickly, grind, sacrifice sleep, ignore intuition, achieve. And one day you look around and realize you did everything they told you to do. And yet you still feel empty, still feel lost, still feel tired. That's not failure. That's the system working as designed, because they don't want you well. They want you functioning just enough to keep participating. You were trained to measure your value by external markers, grades, followers, income, speed, status. But what if your true worth was never meant to be measured, only embodied? What if your tiredness isn't weakness, but wisdom? What if it's your body's rebellion against a rhythm you were never designed to follow? What if your exhaustion is your soul's final warning flare, a sacred message that says you're not broken, you're just misaligned? Let that sink in, because no supplement, no planner, no hustle routine can save you. If you're still anchored to a script that glorifies depletion, the system won't rescue you. It never planned to. That's your job now. To remember who you were before they taught you to be efficient instead of embodied, measurable instead of magnetic, productive instead of present. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize the script, you can start to rewrite it, because you were never lazy, never lost, never weak. You were conditioned to forget, to fragment, to comply. And now it's time to wake up. Let me tell you 3 stories. None of them made the news, but they happen every day, in silence, behind smiles, inside inboxes, inside people just like you. Case 1. Daniel, age 34, lives in a modern apartment, has a good job title, gets likes when he posts. Everyone says he's killing it, except he hasn't felt alive in years. He wakes up every day with a lump in his chest. It's not panic, it's not sadness. It's something worse, numbness. He works 10 hours a day, then goes to the gym just to feel something. Scrolls for 2 more hours, sleeps with tension in his jaw, then does it again. He's not depressed enough to be helped, not desperate enough to walk away, just tired. He once wanted to build a brand that healed people. Now he manages accounts that sell to people. He tells himself he's grateful, but in truth, he's surviving a version of success he never questioned. Case 2, Layla, 29. On paper, she's thriving, beautiful, sharp, independent. She leads a team, she mentors younger women, she's admired, but behind closed doors. She's exhausted from being strong all the time. She holds everyone together, but feels like she's falling apart. She was taught early, don't be a burden, be useful, be responsible, be the one people can count on. So she became that, at the cost of herself. Now she doesn't cry anymore, not because she's healed, because she doesn't have the energy to. Her laugh is real, but hollow. Her confidence is practiced. Her calendar is full, but her soul feels empty. She doesn't need therapy. She needs permission to rest, but no one ever taught her that was allowed. Case 3, Miguel, 42, father of 2, provider, always on time, never misses work, except lately something shifted. He can't focus. He forgets things. He feels like his body is walking through life, but his mind is elsewhere. He used to have dreams. Now he has duties. He tells himself it's just age, stress, responsibility. But deep down, he knows the truth. He disappeared years ago, not all at once, bit by bit. He stopped playing music, stopped painting, stopped laughing without guilt. He did what good men do. He sacrificed. But no one told him sacrifice without renewal becomes self-erasure. And now he's tired, not just in his body, but in his identity. These aren't rare stories. They're rituals of modern life, different faces, same script, people waking up every day and walking further from who they really are, all while looking fine. On the outside, they're not weak, they're not broken, they're not lazy. They're just disconnected from the version of themselves that was never allowed to exist. And maybe you saw yourself in one of them, because chances are your tiredness doesn't come from effort, but from disconnection, from the slow death of your original blueprint, from the constant pretending, from the pressure to optimize yourself like a machine instead of honoring yourself like a human. But here's what no one tells you. The soul never forgets. No matter how long you ignore it, it will whisper. And if you don't listen to the whisper, it will scream. In the form of fatigue, anxiety, irritability, boredom, restlessness, numbness, or worst of all, apathy. Because apathy is the soul's final defense. When the body keeps going, but the heart stops caring. But you're not here by accident. You're watching this for a reason, because maybe, just maybe, your soul is done being silent. And now it's your turn to respond. Not with guilt, not with more goals, but with remembrance. You are not Layla, not Daniel, not Miguel. You are you, and that means something, even if you forgot what. And now, we rebuild. You can't heal what you keep pretending is normal, and you can't rebuild your life if you're still defending the script that broke you. So let's get honest. Not poetic, not motivational, just painfully honest. You're exhausted because you've been carrying someone else's blueprint. You were handed a set of instructions you never questioned, because questioning meant rejection. You didn't consent to this mask. You inherited it. From parents who never learned how to rest. From teachers who praised performance over curiosity, from churches that sanctified suffering and demonized desire, from bosses who taught you that burnout means you care. They didn't need to lie to you, they just needed you to accept silence as safety. So you internalized it, you thought you were choosing. But what you were really doing was complying. The worst part? You became so good at playing the role that you forgot it was a role. You confused survival with identity, structure with self, busy with valuable, obedience with peace. You crafted a life that looked right on paper, but felt hollow in your chest. You said yes when you meant no. You kept the job because it made sense. You stayed in the relationship because it wasn't that bad. You smiled through the pain because at least you're not alone. But deep down, you knew. You always knew. There was a version of you buried underneath the performance, the one that didn't edit themselves, the one that moved slower, laughed louder, felt deeper, questioned more, created without apology. But over time, that version got quieter because it scared people, because it disrupted expectations, because it didn't fit the model. So you locked it away, not to kill it, but to function. And that's why you're tired. Because performance is expensive, especially when the audience doesn't even clap anymore. So how do you return? How do you unlearn the mask? You start by listening, not to the noise, not to the algorithm, but to the silence you've been avoiding. Because in that silence lives the first whisper of your real self, the one you buried to be liked, the one you edited to be accepted, the one you silenced to be safe. That self doesn't speak in schedules. It speaks in sensation, in how your chest tightens when you say yes to something you don't want, in how your jaw clenches when you pretend to agree, in how your breath shortens when you overcommit out of guilt, in how your stomach turns when you ignore your intuition. Again, these aren't symptoms. They're signals. And the fact that you feel them means you're not dead inside. You're just disoriented. So here's the hard truth. You don't need to find yourself. You need to remove what's not you. You need to get rid of the voice that says, that's not realistic. The one that says, you're too much. The one that says, don't make it awkward. The one that says, be professional. The one that says, you should just be grateful. None of those voices are yours. They were programmed into you, installed without your permission, by people who were also running scripts they never questioned. You're not the origin, but you can be the end point. You can say, it stops with me. And that's where your new identity begins, not by becoming someone else, but by remembering who you were before you were trained to forget. It will feel terrifying, because nothing is scarier than disappointing the people who benefited from your compliance. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're selfish. They'll say you're lost. But don't confuse their discomfort with your wrongness. Don't confuse their silence with abandonment. Don't confuse their resistance with truth. You're not lost. You're returning to your own pace, your own knowing, your own rhythm, your own voice. And yes, that will cost you. You'll lose proximity to people who only loved the mask. You'll lose access to spaces that only valued your performance. You'll lose the illusion of safety. But what you'll gain is authority, not over others, but over your own life. And that's what they never wanted you to have, because a person in alignment can't be manipulated. A person who knows who they are doesn't follow blindly. A person who's rooted can't be pulled. And that makes you dangerous to a system that survives on confusion. So they'll call you arrogant, they'll call you intense, they'll call you hard to read, wear it like armor. Because you don't owe them clarity, you owe yourself truth. And from that truth, a new identity will rise. Not built on noise, but on knowing. Not built on hustle, but on honor. Not built on compliance, but on courage. And the fatigue, it won't disappear overnight, but it will shift from numb exhaustion to sacred exertion. Because building your life from alignment isn't easy. But at least you're tired from truth, not performance. And that kind of tired, that's the kind that leads to freedom. Let's keep going. Alignment doesn't start with a vision board. It starts with a boundary. Because you don't need more time. You need less leakage, less pretending, less performing, less spending energy on things that fracture you. You've spent years editing yourself for acceptance. Now it's time to start editing your life for alignment. And that begins with structure. Not rigid, not robotic, but sacred, because the life you want can't survive inside the rhythm you currently tolerate. Let's start with your mornings. Your first hour isn't just time, it's tone. It determines your nervous system, your identity, your momentum. And yet, most people give it away instantly, to a screen, to dopamine loops, to other people's priorities. You can't build sovereignty if the first thing you consume is someone else's content. You can't reclaim your voice if your feed speaks louder than your thoughts. So here's the shift. No screen for 30 minutes, no messages before you speak to yourself. One page of journaling, not to be productive, but to remember your center. Move your body. Say your truth out loud. This isn't optimization. This is reclamation. You're not trying to be a better performer. You're learning to live unmasked. Now look at your calendar. Does it reflect your calling or your conditioning? If I looked at your weekly schedule, would I see space for vision or just maintenance? Would I see sacred time blocked for thinking, creating, breathing, or just a parade of obligations you forgot how to say no to? Alignment requires deletion. You cannot heal while still attending everything that made you sick. You cannot rebuild in rooms that only know the old version of you. This is where you reclaim your hours like you reclaim your soul, ruthlessly, lovingly, without apology. You say, "This hour is mine. This block is sacred. This time is non-negotiable." This version of me doesn't overextend just to be liked, because boundaries don't restrict you, they reveal you. Next, look at your decisions. You don't need more options. You need clarity filters. Before saying yes, ask, does this serve my vision or just my ego? Am I saying yes from alignment or from fear of being misunderstood? Will this drain me or deepen me? If you don't ask these questions, you'll spend the next 5 years building someone else's life again, just with better branding. Decision fatigue isn't about volume, it's about misalignment. You're tired not because you do too much, but because you decide too often from the wrong place. Root yourself. Let your yes be sacred. Let your no be final. Now your relationships. You don't need a bigger network. You need braver proximity, people who don't flinch when you tell the truth, people who hold your silence without needing to fix it, people who see your clarity as power, not threat, people who reflect your vision back to you when you forget it. This is the hardest shift, because most of your fatigue comes from code switching to survive your circle. You dim, you explain, you adjust your tone, you downplay your intensity, you soften your vision so others don't feel insecure. That's not compassion, that's self-erasure, and you don't have to hate them, but you do have to outgrow them. Because every time you stay where you've outgrown, you send yourself the message, I'm not worthy of more. And that belief, that's the real exhaustion. Finally, your presence. How do you show up? Are you animated by performance or anchored in truth? Do you speak to be liked or to be felt? Do you post to be seen or to transmit frequency? Do you walk into rooms with certainty or with camouflage? You don't have to be loud, you just have to be rooted, because when you are rooted, you become a mirror, and people will either align or flee. Let them. You are no longer adjusting your presence to make people comfortable. You are commanding the space to match your clarity. That is identity in action. That is embodiment. That is the beginning of ease, not because life is easy, but because you stopped lying. And that's what ease really is, living in sync with yourself. So no, alignment isn't magic, it's not a vibe, it's not a mantra, it's architecture, built through boundaries, chosen in silence, protected with repetition, reinforced by discomfort. You want peace? Make it structural. You want energy? Stop giving it to what breaks you. You want freedom? Schedule it, protect it, embody it, because the version of you you're becoming won't arrive through hustle. It arrives when you decide, I will no longer trade my identity for temporary acceptance. And when you make that decision, the system can't hold you anymore because you stopped playing the part and started writing your own. Let's keep building. You made the decision. You chose alignment. You started saying no. You slowed down. You simplified. You listened to yourself again. And for a moment it felt like relief, like air finally filled your lungs again, like silence wasn't dangerous anymore, like you were remembering something sacred, but then it hits you, the resistance, not from the outside, but from inside you, the inner voice, the one you thought was quiet, the one that says, "This is selfish. You're falling behind. You're not trying hard enough. Who do you think you are?" That's the moment most people go back, not because they were wrong, but because the old programming got loud again, and that's the part you must understand. The mind doesn't want freedom. It wants familiarity. You've been wired for obedience, not by evil forces, but by repetition. You were rewarded for shrinking. You were praised for not making it about you. You were affirmed when you suppressed your truth for the greater good. So, of course, your nervous system is confused. You're doing everything right now, but it feels wrong. Because right used to mean predictable. Right used to mean pleasing. Right used to mean don't rock the boat. And now you're rocking the whole damn ocean. So your mind pushes back, not because it hates you, but because it doesn't understand this new rhythm yet. You're reprogramming, and reprogramming always feels like rebellion at first. This is where most people quit. Not because they're weak, but because they think discomfort means disqualification. But discomfort doesn't mean stop. It means you're leaving the cage they dressed up to look like success, the cage they filled with applause and performance, the cage that gave you validation at the cost of your truth. And now that you've stepped out, you're cold, you're alone, you're exposed. And the system inside your mind, the old one, it panics. It says, go back. At least there, we knew who we were. At least there, we knew the script. But the script was killing you. Quietly, slowly, ritualistically. This is the detox phase. You're not confused, you're being rewired. Your mind is recalibrating, your body is shedding the old armor, your soul is stretching in places it's never been allowed to move. It's messy, it's non-linear, it's not marketable, but it's real. You'll feel guilt, you'll feel grief. You'll question yourself at 3 a.m. You'll wonder why this version of growth feels like dying. It's because it is. A death of the self that was built to be liked. The self that got applause, the self that made others comfortable, the self that paid rent with silence. That self can't walk with you now. It's too small for where you're going. So let's talk about the tools, because you need more than hope. You need handles. When the voice says, you're behind, you answer, I'm not behind. I'm unlearning what was never mine. When the feeling says, you're failing, you respond, I'm breaking the contract I signed with survival. When the fear says, no one will understand you, you whisper, I wasn't meant to be understood. I was meant to be embodied. You talk back, not with anger, but with authority, because your nervous system doesn't believe words. It believes repetition. And every time you choose alignment over approval, your body rewires. One choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one breath at a time. You will be tempted to go numb again, to busy yourself, to binge, to scroll, to escape into old habits, not because you're weak, but because the old path is familiar pain, and familiar pain and feels safer than unknown freedom. But this time you know the truth, and the truth isn't gentle. It doesn't always feel good, but it frees you. So when the resistance rises, you don't run. You breathe, you name it, you thank it, you release it. Because that resistance, that's just the echo of a script that no longer fits, and the echo always gets louder, right before it dies. This is the in-between, not who you were, not yet who you'll be, just you, naked, unfiltered, becoming, and it's sacred. Here, Don't rush, don't panic, don't judge your pace. The system conditioned you to measure growth in speed. But real transformation moves at the speed of trust. And you're learning to trust yourself again, to follow your own frequency, to believe your own voice. That takes time, but it's worth every silent mile. Because when you come out on the other side, you won't just be well rested, you'll be reclaimed. And nothing, no system, no algorithm, no relationship will be able to rewrite you again, because you'll finally know you are not who they trained you to be. You are who you decide to become now. Let's go deeper. You're not out of energy, you're just misusing it, because energy doesn't disappear, it doesn't vanish, it redirects. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you leak energy. Every time you stay silent when truth burns in your chest, you leak energy. Every time you scroll to avoid your intuition, you leak energy. Every time you betray your own rhythm to match the pace of a system that never loved you, you leak energy. You're not tired because you're broken. You're tired because you've been leaking energy through 1,000 invisible cuts. And now it's time to reclaim it. You were never meant to use your energy to sustain a life you resent. You were never meant to use your fire to keep everyone else warm while you freeze. You were never meant to use your gifts to build temples for people who don't respect your name. That exhaustion you feel, that's your soul withdrawing its permission from a reality that no longer fits your frequency. It's not depression, it's rejection of the lie. Your tiredness is sacred. It's a message. It's your internal compass screaming, you weren't made for this. You're not supposed to live this fragmented. Your power is being misdirected. And once you understand that, everything changes. Let's get practical. Think of your energy like currency. Would you keep investing in a stock that never grows? Would you pour money into a company that disrespects you? Would you pay rent for a space that makes you sick? No. But that's what you've been doing with your life force. So it's time to audit your energy the same way you'd audit your finances. Ask yourself, where is my energy going daily? Who is receiving it by default? What patterns are draining me without return? What parts of my life are just loops of obligation? And most importantly, what would it look like if I spent my energy only on what expands me? That's not selfish, that's stewardship. You need to stop seeing your fatigue as a flaw and start seeing it as a feedback system. Because inside your tiredness is a map. It tells you where you're disconnected, where you're overextended, where you're performing, where you're out of sync with your truth. You don't need a full overhaul to begin. You just need to start with one point of alignment, one place where you say, no more. This doesn't carry my frequency anymore. I'm done bleeding. Life for something that doesn't recognize my name. That moment, that's when your tiredness begins to transmute into fire. Because here's what no one teaches you. Fatigue, when honored, becomes fuel. The same energy that exhausts you through disconnection empowers you through embodiment. Once you stop leaking, you start creating. Once you stop obeying, you start building. Once you stop pretending, you start attracting. And suddenly, your energy isn't something you fight for. It's something you become. You become vibrant, not because life is easy, but because you're no longer draining yourself for things you don't believe in. You become magnetic, not because you're performing, but because alignment is attractive. You become powerful, not because you scream, but because your presence is no longer for sale. That's the shift from being tired of life to being tired for the right reasons. You're allowed to feel spent after pouring into your mission. You're allowed to feel stretched after birthing something real. You're allowed to feel emptied after building what you believe in. That kind of tiredness, it's sacred, it's purposeful, it regenerates you. Because when your soul recognizes the output, it replenishes you with something machines can't mimic, fulfillment. And here's the miracle. The moment you stop wasting energy on survival, you unlock capacity for creation. The moment you stop investing in versions of yourself that keep others comfortable, you unleash a new frequency. And that frequency, it creates things. It writes books, it births movements, it repairs bloodlines, it shifts rooms, it changes economies, it bends time. You thought you were just tired, but you were actually one aligned decision away from becoming a living signal. Not everyone will understand, not everyone is meant to, but your tiredness wasn't weakness. It was prophecy. Let's move. There's a moment in every awakening where something strange happens. You stop explaining yourself, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because you finally realize you were never meant to be understood by a system you were designed to disrupt. And that silence, that new quiet that enters your life when the mask falls, it's not isolation, it's ascension. You're no longer proving, you're no longer asking for validation, you're no longer shaping yourself to fit in rooms you've outgrown. You're simply walking, clear, grounded, unapologetic, and that's when people start to notice. They'll say, "You've changed." They're right, but what they really mean is, "I don't recognize the version of you that no longer needs my approval." And that's okay, because the people who were meant to walk with the real you, they'll find you, not through marketing, not through branding, but through frequency. Because once you stop leaking energy, you start transmitting clarity. And clarity is a magnet. It pulls in what aligns. It repels what distracts. It organizes reality around your truth. That's the shift most people miss. They think power comes from volume. But real power, it comes from presence. Presence doesn't hustle. Presence doesn't convince. Presence doesn't overshare. It simply is. And the more you return to your true presence, the more you realize that the version of you that was constantly tired was a version built for survival. This new version, this rooted, silent, anchored you, you're not tired anymore. You're just strategic. You no longer waste your words. You no longer trade your time. You no longer dilute your truth. You move in rhythm. You speak with precision. You rest without guilt. That's the ascension they can't comprehend, because the world loves noise. Louder posts, faster content, hotter takes, more explanation, more access. But you've exited that economy. You don't give access. You curate energy. Not everyone gets to know you now. Not everyone gets to hear your why. Not everyone gets to see your process. You've shifted from "look at me" to "watch what I build." And that's terrifying, to a system that trains people to overshare for connection. But you're no longer interested in being visible. You're interested in being aligned. And alignment isn't loud, it's lethal. This is where the reconstruction becomes irreversible. You no longer ask, "Am I too much?" You ask, "Is this room too small?" You no longer ask, "Will they like me?" You ask, "Do they resonate with the truth I carry?" You no longer apologize for needing rest, space, boundaries, pace. You enforce. In them, not with anger, but with authority. Because authority without explanation, that's sovereignty. And you are finally walking in that now. Your schedule reflects your values. Your silence reflects your confidence. Your decisions are quiet, but seismic. People sense something shifted, but they can't name it. They just feel a deeper gravity when you enter, a new weight when you speak, a calm disruption in how you hold space. That's the byproduct of alignment. You don't yell anymore. You don't beg. You don't overcompensate, you just exist, and the room adjusts. And here's the best part. You're no longer surprised when things move in your favor, because you finally believe you're worthy of flow, not just force. So what's next? You keep ascending, quietly, consistently, intentionally. You don't stop to explain your elevation. You don't pause to translate your clarity. You let your energy speak. You let your structure hold. You let your truth breathe. This is the frequency of the builder, of the blueprint bearer, of the soul who no longer asks for permission to exist in full. And when you move from this place, you're not just less tired, you're untouchable. Let's keep going. Now that you're awake, now that you've stopped explaining, now that you've remembered your rhythm, the question becomes, what do you build from here? Because identity, when not expressed, becomes noise, and clarity without structure becomes pressure. You weren't meant to just feel better, you were meant to build better. This next phase isn't spiritual, it's strategic. It's where remembrance becomes reconstruction. Let's get grounded. Every decision from this point forward must pass through the new blueprint. Not the old one, the one they gave you. Not the mask, the one that kept you liked, but the one you recovered from the silence. You ask, does this version of me say yes to this? Does this project reflect my knowing? Does this pace reflect my nervous system, not their pressure? Because it's not just about protecting energy now, it's about positioning it. You have power, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that builds foundations, not just moments, the kind that outlasts noise and outruns trends. But to use that power well, you need to build infrastructure. Here's where most awakened people get stuck. They leave the system, but never replace it. They exit hustle culture, but live in chaos. They say no to performance, but don't install process. They reclaim their truth, but don't organize it. But builders systematize their clarity. They create rhythms. They honor their energy. They schedule their boundaries. They document their flow. They align their income with their embodiment. They say, if I'm going to be free, my calendar must reflect it, because without structure, your freedom becomes another fantasy, a vibe without velocity, a knowing without momentum. So ask yourself, what does the embodied version of me prioritize this week? What gets removed from my environment because it no longer reflects my center? What gets automated so I can stay rooted in presence? What gets paused, not out of fear, but from honor? These are not productivity questions. They are identity questions. Because you're not just organizing tasks, you're curating a life, one that holds you, feeds you, reflects you, expands you. And if it doesn't do that, it doesn't stay. You also need to build outputs. This is where you turn pain into product, insight into offer, wisdom into pathway, story into system. This doesn't mean become a coach or brand or influencer. It means turn your frequency into a framework so others can follow, so your impact can multiply, so your silence becomes legacy, not just self-care. Your experience is not a journal entry, it's a blueprint, and blueprints need to be shared, refined, activated. What healed you can now help others. What cost you everything can now become income, curriculum, infrastructure. You no longer hustle, you harvest, because your presence is now a product of alignment, and that's magnetic. And here's the wild part. You'll do less, but move more. You'll speak less, but resonate deeper. You'll post less, but transmit louder, because everything you do now is rooted. No more urgency, no more performance, no more pleasing, only precision, only intention, only soul-backed systems that outlast trends. That's what legacy sounds like now. And yes, people will feel it. They'll sense you're not playing the same game anymore. They'll ask, what changed? And you won't need to answer, because your existence will speak for you. Your pace, your boundaries, your offerings, your absence from places you once begged to belong. That's all the proof they need. And those meant to walk with you, they'll find you, not because you marketed yourself well, but because alignment has a frequency, and you're finally vibrating at yours. Let's go further. There's a moment in every transformation that can't be skipped. It doesn't happen in a journal. It doesn't happen during a morning routine. It doesn't even happen when you decide to change. It happens when something inside you dies, quietly, privately, permanently. It's the moment you realize the old self, the one who survived, pleased, performed, isn't coming with you, not because you hate them, not because they failed, but because their time is up. They were the bridge, not the home. And yes, it hurts. You feel grief, not for what was lost, but for what was familiar. The habits, the people, the roles, the approval. Letting go feels like betrayal, but the real betrayal would be staying. Because staying means pretending that your new identity fits inside the old shell. It doesn't. You've outgrown it, and now it's time to bury it, not with violence, but with reverence. You honor what it gave you, resilience, survival, a mask that worked until it didn't. But then you lay it down, and you walk away, not because you're heartless, but because you're finally whole. This is where the shift becomes irreversible. You no longer need the external to reflect the internal. You don't need applause to confirm your truth. You don't need understanding to feel grounded. You know who you are. You know what you carry. You know what you're building. And from that knowing, a new authority is born. Not the loud kind, not the forced kind, the kind that walks into a room and shifts the air without a word. Because when you're rooted in truth, you don't compete, you command. You command space, you command attention, you command alignment. And the tiredness, it fades. Not because you rest more, but because you're no longer running from yourself. You've stopped negotiating with people who only knew the version of you that suffered silently. You've stopped explaining your boundaries to those who benefited from your lack of them. You've stopped over-delivering for rooms that never deserved your voice. This is not arrogance. This is arrival. You've arrived at your center. And from here, your power expands in silence. No begging, no proving, no adjusting. You simply build, and the right people feel it. This is where your voice deepens, not in tone, in resonance. It vibrates differently, it moves differently, because it's no longer filtered through performance. You speak because you're full, not because you need to be heard. And when you speak from fullness, people don't just listen, they remember themselves. Because your frequency is now a mirror. You've become the kind of person who doesn't give advice. You transmit clarity, and clarity heals faster than instruction ever could. Let this settle. You no longer perform peace. You embody it. You no longer outsource safety. You generate it. You no longer chase freedom. You've structured it. This is what they never taught you, that the opposite of tired isn't rest. It's wholeness, and wholeness feels like saying no without explaining, walking away without guilt, creating without waiting, loving without losing yourself, resting without permission. That's what real alignment does. It doesn't just energize you, it restores you. So now when people ask, why are you so calm? How are you so focused? Why don't you get triggered? You won't say much, you'll just smile, because they're feeling it. Your alignment, your authority, your blueprint. And what they're really asking is, how do I become that rooted? And maybe you'll answer, or maybe you won't, because truth doesn't always need a translator. Sometimes it just needs a presence. And now that presence is you. You've been taught to treat your body like a machine, fuel it, push it, optimize it, use it to perform, ignore it when it speaks. But now you finally see it differently, not as a tool, not as a burden, but as a temple, a sacred structure, a carrier of frequency, a compass that never forgot where you were meant to go. You realize every ache was a warning, every tension was a boundary you didn't set, every illness was resistance solidified in flesh. You weren't weak, you were overridden, and now your body becomes your first line of clarity. Your baseline of truth, your access point to divinity. You ask, do I feel safe in this moment? Do I expand or contract in this space? Does this pace honor my nervous system or attack it? This is not self-care. This is alignment engineering. You begin to live as if your nervous system is holy, You stop forcing, you stop shaming, you stop negotiating with environments that shrink you, you start designing. Your schedule flows around your biology, your meals respect your rhythm, your sleep becomes strategy, your silence becomes sacred, because now you understand sustainability is not a luxury, it's a requirement for legacy. And you're not here for flashes, you're here to build frequency that outlives you, so you treat your body like it matters, because it does, not for how it looks, but for how it holds your truth. And speaking of truth, you don't announce it anymore, you don't debate it, you don't defend it, you don't dramatize it, you just live it. Your silence becomes your signature, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're too anchored to prove. That's what they don't expect. They expect noise, they expect rebellion, they expect ego. But instead, you bring silence, stillness, clarity, and that's what disorients the system, because silence is not absence. Silence is authority unshaken. Your relationships shift. Some will drift, some will dissolve, some will resent the version of you who no longer plays small, but a few, they'll rise to meet you, they'll match your peace, they'll sharpen your vision, they'll love the version of you who stopped translating your soul for temporary connection. And for the rest, let them go. Because you're not meant to carry expired frequencies, you're not obligated to make others comfortable with your wholeness. This is not cruelty. This is congruence. You no longer align with half versions. You don't belong in borrowed scripts. You refuse to keep adjusting your bandwidth to fit their noise. This is the new functionality. Your calendar reflects your clarity. Your money reflects your embodiment. Your rest reflects your sovereignty. Your pace reflects your purpose. Your voice reflects your lineage. Your silence reflects your signal. You don't need more strategies, you need more stability inside. Because when the inside is clear, the outside responds. Clients find you, ideas find you, clarity finds you, love finds you. Not because you're chasing, but because you've become a beacon. You no longer push, you pull, you don't hustle, you hold, you don't prove, you transmit. This is what all the fatigue was leading to, not collapse, but clarity. Your tiredness was never the enemy. It was the final message before rebirth. And now, you are born again, not into a religion, but into your original pattern. You don't need a temple. You've become one. You don't need an altar. You build from one. You don't need to escape the world. You reconstruct it from within. And that's how systems fall. Not from war, but from the alignment of those who remember who they are. This is the part of the story where most people expect a resolution, a perfect bow, a checklist, a formula. But awakening doesn't end like that. It doesn't end at all. It becomes a rhythm, a pattern, a pulse inside you that moves differently. Now, a legacy you carry, not by name, but by frequency. Because after everything you've shed, after everything you've buried, after everything you've reclaimed, you didn't become a better version of yourself. You became the original one, the one before programming, before expectation, before exhaustion, the one who knew, who remembered, who wasn't tired, because they never betrayed their rhythm. And now, that's who walks forward. Not the version that needs applause, not the one who performs to be safe, not the one who confuses love with compliance. You now walk as a signal, a living structure, an embodied message, a walking rebellion against everything they tried to use to domesticate your soul. Your silence is your statement, your energy is your evidence, your routine is your revolution, your rest is your resistance, your rhythm is your weapon, because you no longer serve the system. You are your own system now, and systems, once rebuilt, create worlds. So what world will you build? Will you build one where rest is sacred? Where clarity matters more than hustle, where identity isn't traded for applause? Will you build in secret for a while, protected by your silence, honoring your body as blueprint and letting your vision do the talking? Will you become the one who breaks cycles, not with rage, but with structure? Because make no mistake, you are the blueprint now. Others will watch you, not for advice, but for resonance. They'll feel something in your rhythm and say, I don't know what it is, but it feels like truth. And it is. Because you're not tired anymore, you're tuned. Let that be your signature from now on. Not perfection, not popularity, just presence. You don't rush, you radiate. You don't prove, you align. You don't negotiate your value, you install it. That's legacy. That's what you carry now. And the world won't understand at first. They'll try to pull you back. They'll ask for the old you. They'll tempt you with noise, but you won't respond. Because you're no longer available for anything that doesn't honor your wholeness. You've buried the version of you that begged. You've crowned the version of you that builds. So now I ask you to do one final thing. Not for me, but for the others. The ones still tired, the ones still pretending, the ones still scrolling through life looking for a reflection of something they can't name. Share this video with someone who needs to hear what you just walked through. Someone who's still stuck in the version of themselves that's shrinking for love. Someone who doesn't even know they're tired because they've never felt what being truly aligned feels like. Comment below. What mask did you finally bury? What did this message wake up in you? Like this video, if something shifted in your spirit, that tells the algorithm this isn't just content, it's a transmission. Subscribe if you're ready to walk a different path. This space isn't for entertainment, it's for reconstruction. And you've just crossed the threshold, so welcome. Not to a community, but to your real self. Let's walk.